sure my notifications have some of the worst timing, and they cause me to go into the mind of madness. It's the Wednesday before the ROC Canada Cup. So we're going to do a Wednesday and Thursday episode this week. And then after this week, we're going to start focusing on the WKOs. Now, I was going to do this beforehand, but I have to check something very briefly because something hasn't been released on another site. I can't talk about it. But before we get started on that, let's do the usual. What's my update? My update on me is, well, it's me. I'm sorry, I'm just jumping in the chat there to remind everybody the chat is free forum today. Go nuts. If you have any comments or questions, I'll try to catch them in the chat. Try to avoid too many questions, though, because how do I put this? I'm mostly here to just ramble and kind of focus on getting the show in the right direction. I'm a little exhausted. I just got off the exercise bike because I worked out just before this. So I'm trying to just kind of get my groove back. Gonna do this not sugar-free today because I'm a crazy man. Okay, so I can't talk about that thing today because the article wasn't released on the Apex Insiders. Awesome. Keep your eyes open on that. I got some fun stuff coming up there. But let's start as I usually do with the not so Heroclix stuff. Been video gaming, of course. Did a little bit of Street Fighter this weekend. Not much. I got to stop playing on the weekend because it embarrasses me. But I have started Final Fantasy 3/6 while I was on the exercise bike, and it's a great game. A little overrated, but that could be just time. It's not to say it's a bad game. I'm enjoying the game, but I don't feel like it is quite at the level that everybody kind of puts it at. Though I'm still only 4 hours in the game, which Final Fantasy is barely cracking the surface. So we'll see where I stand there. As far as ROC Canada Cup, I've done a dumb. I've done a big dumb, and there's no going back from it now. Made a decision in timing that I don't usually do. I have made a last-minute decision on my team, and it's making me a little nervous. What's more is I've put it on record, and I'm waiting for the article to be published, but yeah, I did a dumb. So once that article is out, I will share my thoughts on it and what my plan was and everything. But it's one of those situations where I saw something in the game of Heroclix and was immediately, I saw the light, as it were. You know, you sometimes you look at the thing and you go, oh, I can do that, can't I? And that ends up happening. So, as far as Heroclix is concerned, I did get a chance. I didn't play this weekend. Now that I think about it, because I was judging. But we got our days feature pass. We've got our cards. So yay! That's good news. Looking forward to making some functional use out of those at some point. Super uninteresting today, aren't I? I probably should have waited an extra day for the show, but I wanted to kind of leave my Friday open to be available to, you know, not have to do this and, you know, have some beverages, calm down, relax. Saturday I'll have as well to do that. And 2 nice relaxing days before a Heroclix tournament is probably a good idea. What do you guys think? Okay, so my boring old self has I've been thinking about some things. A lot of them in the way of game design, you know, where this game is going, how this game is designed, thinking my way through it and whatnot, having a lot of fun, just kind of speculating on the thought process behind decisions being made in the game. It is what it is. It's me being silly. And this is what I do. This is what powers the nonsense here. I have started speculating ideas towards that rule, that unified document for the all common format. I haven't come up with a proper name for it. We all refer to it instinctively as a lot of Magic players will refer to it as Pauper, but I don't want to necessarily take that. I am thinking somewhere along the lines of Everyman format as a name. It kind of fits that comics scene. It makes me think of that Lex Luthor book where he makes Everyman, or maybe it was a movie. I'm trying to remember. I don't read a ton of DC, but I've come across some things. I believe the Everyman project was make every man a superhero. Then way if everybody's super, then nobody isn't. It's kind of the goal there. And that's kind of why I want to name it the Everyman, because commons are what every man has. Every person, sure. And I think it fits the theme, fits the idea, and kind of fits the naming process, and it keeps it comic wise. I mean, Heroclix is called Heroclix's formats are called Golden Age and Modern Age for a reason. They fit the comic idea, right? So Everyman being modern commons only makes a little bit of sense to me. So yeah, I've named the format. Clear defining rules are pretty easy for the most part. There will be those like exceptional FAQ type questions where it comes down to, will somebody ask this question? Yes. Okay, how do I answer this question? And no. So like, can my character who can bring a sideline character who's uncommon have that sideline character? No, because they are not common. All elements would have to become. I have to kind of make sure I stress that out and put it in proper game language and before I do that, because if people want to use this and have this as a reference, it's always best to have that kind of information readily available, as it were. I'm gonna have to apologize for my pacing and my umming and ahhing today, as it's that final countdown. I've done everything, all the damage I could possibly do to myself today, and I'm kind of, you know what? I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna ruin it. I'm gonna ruin an article. Sorry, Patrick. I needed content for my own show, and I thought you'd get it up by today. So I did a dumb, and that dumb is I want to test viability, as it were. And the story goes, this past weekend, I was watching our Days of Future Past event. The format, as I discussed before, was bring 300 points and then add 100 points, or build a 400-point team with 100 points having to come from a selection of 6 gravity feeds. It's a slog of a format. I building out of gravity feeds is such a random box of nonsense. But the player who won the tournament caught me off guard with something. Basically, what he did was he took the Ninja Turtle starter and a couple of the Pogs and one other figure and opened some Ninja Turtles. Excuse me. Some Ninja Turtles packs. As a result, he was using the 4 Fast Force Ninja Turtles. They're really good. They're really, really good. And let's go through. I'm going to go through them all as we explain the story of how we got to where we're going this weekend. Just as a precursor, when we go to HC Realms, you're going to see one of the characters marked as a 0. I don't know who to tell HC Realms about this. So sorry, tough nuggies on that one. So the team the 4 Ninja Turtles are Leonardo, Michelangelo, Raphael, and Donatello. Let's go down, shall we? We're going to start with Leonardo. Leonardo leads. Okay, cool. Whatever you say. Sorry. Sometimes I make little snarky remarks about Leonardo. He's my least favorite of the Ninja Turtles because he's basically the worst. Trust me, I'm not the only one who thinks this. Okay. Most people who think Leonardo is the best are sociopaths. Sorry. Anyway, so he's a Blades Claws charging leader, as it were. He comes in at 50 points like all the other ones will, except for Michelangelo's listed as 0 for some reason, HC Realms. Heroclix the leadership. Special attack power, deep slash attack, Blades Claws Fangs, exploit weakness, but only when Leonardo has no action tokens. Now, all 4 turtles have this trait, continue. Leonardo starts the game with a quarter token. When Leonardo would be KO'd, you may remove a quarter token from any friendly character, including himself, note any friendly character, and instead turn him to click number 2. If you do, your opponent scores 25 points, protected pulse waves. You can't pulse wave your way out of this. Michelangelo, same deal, except instead of charging, he sidesteps, and when he has no action tokens, he flurries. Now, special attack power on Donatello is Blades Claws, but when he has no action tokens, he on Leonardo, he has exploit weakness as well, which is a handy power to have in conjunction with Blades Claws. Anyway, and this whirling spin attack comes with sidestep, improved movement, but his flurry is what's limited by having no action tokens, which you're going to start to see is a bit of a trend in this set. Next up, we have Raphael. He's got the Psy, which gives him sidestep, running shot with a range of 4 and 2 targets, but only when Raphael has no action tokens. So fundamentally, that power gives him sidestep. And then Donatello, his is Outwit and Passenger 3, but only to carry characters with the TMNT keyword. So all of these guys are very interesting, as you can see. A couple fundamental points about them. They're all 5 clicks. They all have a somewhat limited power in some way, shape, or form, like a power, but only if they have no action tokens. Except for Donatello, who carries everybody, but only to simply carry characters with TMNT keyword. Which is part and parcel of why, if you go through TMNT Ninja Turtle sets, you'll notice that TMNT keyword is limited to generally Donatello, Raphael, Michelangelo, Leonardo, though occasionally I believe we'll see a Splinter with it. I am double checking right now. No, even Splinter generally has a TMNT ally keyword. That's a design decision to make sure or to force certain effects to only affect other Ninja Turtles. The 4 Ninja Turtles being the main character. It's kind of it's a design process, and in any game you kind of keep those little elements. They're a tiny little quirk about the game, but they have major overarching reasonings for them. I mean, like Splinter is not an actual turtle, even though he's part of their family. He's still a TMNT ally because you want to limit TMNT effects to the 4 turtles, but you don't want to have to necessarily name all 3 of them all over the place and whatnot. I mean, there are exceptions. We saw the Chase Turtles do that in the first set. Excuse me, goodness. Where I do believe that they said, hey, if you're next to Donatello, Michelangelo, Leonardo, or Raphael, you get impervious or something like that. I'm going to just double check that to make sure my story checks out. Yeah, Raphael, Donatello, or Leonardo specifically. So just a neat little observation. I guess they kind of noticed it late in the game as far as design is concerned and have started to pick up on that. Anyway. So back to these quarter turtles. What do we know about them? Well, first, they're hard to kill. You kill them once, they're back on click 2. You kill them again, they're back on click 2. If you have 4 of these turtles on the board, you have to kill one. Like if you focus fire on one of them, you have to kill that turtle 5 times to score his full points before you've got you'll get 100 points if you score him 4 times. But you have to score him the 4 times and then kill him the one further. That is it's a lot of killing. It's a lot, to say the least. Yeah, it's a heck of a thing, right? So the dials themselves are not super impressive. They are super killable. A lot of them lacks even like toughness or invulnerability. I think Donatello gets invulnerability in the late dial. So what do we do to mitigate this? Well, there may or may not be a figure in the game that can help provide a little bit more longevity for these characters. Some of you are probably already thinking who I'm thinking about and are probably all ashamed of me as it stands. Yeah, I'm doing this. That character is Peace Machine. What does Peace Machine do, you'll say? Well, Peace Machine has a 7 range with telekinesis. That has its place, but it's not super important. It's a 7 range without wit, which means the minimum 6 is not her problem, or his problem. 7 range is his cool effect. This character is indomitable. They fly. There's all kinds of cool stuff going on with the Peace Machine. In addition, he's got 2 traits. The first one, Peace Machine can use Force Blast. When he does, he may target opposing characters within 3 squares and line of fire. Not bad. Not bad at all. Pretty cool. And then he's got the suppression field. If a character would take 4 or more damage, it takes 3 instead. Now, this is assumed after all modifiers. So if I take 5 damage on one of these Ninja Turtles, or even 6, which I believe is enough to kill one of them, let's go ahead and do this thing. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So if I take 5 damage on the Ninja Turtle, without this toughness there, 1, 2, 3 is as far as I go. So basically, we're forcing these characters to take 2 full-blown shots in the face before they die. And that's at bare minimum. That's like the absolute least amount that we could do. All right. So we've added Peace Machine to the thing. Now, I got a couple problems with the Ninja Turtles on their own. And this is kind of where we went with this. The Ninja Turtles themselves, Leonardo's great. Leadership, these kinds of numbers, kind of needed. Michelangelo brings lots of attacks, reasonable defense, always has flurry, will get some late dial perplex to get around certain things. Raphael has a problem on his last 2 clicks. We need mobility, and Battle Fury is not a mobility-based power. So even if we had Donatello on the team being able to carry on those first 2 clicks, Raphael can't be carried for 2 of his clicks. What's more is if somebody is constantly dealing damage towards Raphael, he will eventually become a problem, an isolated problem for the team. What's more, Donatello, even though he adds out wit, and the carry, once you actually start carrying characters, is only a carry value of 5. Now, I got to give, before I start taking too much credit on the decision making here, I've got a lot of help from our ginger friend in PJ Bolin. Yes, he's going to be one of my opponents this weekend, but hey, we all love each other in the game of Heroclix, and we all want to do well, don't we? All right. So ultimately, Raphael is cool, but I don't think he makes the cut. And Donatello only really brings carry and outwit, and we're adding Peace Machine. We don't need that. So, Jason, what do you do in this case? Well, you do something stupid, like you go to your local games or game and comic store, and you pick up a few extra pieces. Yes, that's right. I own 2 legal versions of Mudman now. All right. Anyway, let's carry on with this nonsense. This thing I really shouldn't be doing. All right. So, Alejandro, what are you referring to the page I'm on right now? Because this is HC Realms under the unit section. Anyway, so now we have 4 very hard to kill turtles with 2 leaderships and 2 sources of flurry with 3 damage. Amber giving the bike seat a dirty look because I just finished using it. And a way of not dealing much damage. But we run into a different problem where you've gotten rid of Donatello, which means we now don't have a source of mobility. Now, this should actually read 250 and not 150 points. And that is, of course, something we're going to need to address on HC Realm somewhere. Not my problem, as it were. So what do? We need to move these guys around. Who? I say who is the lowest points source of ability to move things. That's right. That's right. You heard it. You said it. It's Overdrive. Overdrive is capable of making the charged up token. And of course, the charged up token has carry 4, 18 defense, sidestep, 14 movement. So much. It's got so much going on. And the fact that it can carry 4 characters is bonkers. It's bonkers. All right. So what do we have now? We have 100 points more than this. So we have 285 points. We have 15 points left. So this is where decisions got a little bit more difficult to make. Uh-oh. I have lost camera. Let me see if I can fix that. I'm wondering if it came loose or I'm not sure what happened here. I'm not seeing where we disappeared to. Huh. All right. That is fairly weird. Let me just go back to HC Realms for a second while I mess with this. Anyway, so we have 15 points, and 15 points in the current game is way more flexible than it should ever be. Okay, that looks like it might have done it. All right, yeah, there we go. All right, so 15 points is super flexible. We have a lot of things we can be doing, including such things as ID cards, special terrain, any number of things. Now, this is a team that is very, very close combat focused. So, means to say, boxing ring is a very good source of forcing that. Now, why the boxing ring, you see? Well, for one, you get a little bit of protection from range, which, boy, could my team ever use. You get that forced formation and forcing your opponent in where you are. And if your opponent is forced into the boxing ring, the Ninja Turtles themselves will actually be a lot stronger. And that's part of my decision there. PJ suggested it, and I kind of went with, okay, well, let's see how this is going to go. Now, this is where I'm going to veer off from PJ's suggestion for one reason and one reason alone. I don't have a Blackbird. As a result, my student ID collection from the X-Men set is limited to strictly what's available in the X-Men set. I don't have the student IDs for the rest of the dudes. So that means in my possession, I get to work with Sprite, Artie, Leech, Rusty, Skids, All New Wolverine, Brew, Gold Balls, Prodigy, Chamber, Husk, Jubilee, and Skin Sync. Did any of those pop out at you as exciting? Not as exciting as spending just 10 points on 2 Headmaster level IDs. I say Headmaster level because one of the things I'm using is not a Headmaster ID. It is, in fact, probably one of the safest forms of ID card you could create. The Wanted poster. I am going to be using a Wolverine Wanted poster. Now, the reason for this is twofold. One, all of my characters are 50 points, so I can call in a 50-point Wolverine. The only character who isn't 50 points is Overdrive, and 9 times out of 10, he's going to be spending his time on the board as a 0-point character in the charged up token. Right? So, okay. Not too worried about that. When, if I'm down to the charged up token, I'm dead. So Wolverine it was an obvious call. Also, number of reasons why Wolverine was the appreciated Emily, but I'm going to roll with what I have because I've really put a lot of thought into where I'm going with this. So the Wolverine wanted poster. Let's talk about the big differences. The bounty effect, as it were. When an opposing character hits this ID character, immediately return to your sideline. After resolutions, heal the attacking character. Sucks, but that's what it is. It heal the character one click. If this ID is returned at the beginning of your next turn, heal the character that used its call and help one click. So if I happen to have lost a turtle, that turtle calls in a Wolverine. Lost a quarter. This Wolverine gets called in by that dude. Should this Wolverine happen to stay on the board long enough, and certain situations can definitely easily allow that. There we go. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is my other Headmaster ID card, and that is going to be the Professor X Headmaster ID card. So let me just get this Wolverine on the team. That was one of those things that's easier said than done. Okay, so I'm going to put on the Wolverine Headmaster ID. This is, people are going to look at this on screen, and it's not going to make any sense. They're going to be like, why is it only 200 points? And it's not my fault. It's really not my fault. The other reason I looked at I didn't panic about the student IDs because the only ones that really seemed oofy or going to use were Beast and Cyclops. I didn't think there was a third one that really stood out to me when all of my characters are 50 points. So, next up we got the Professor X ID. Now the Professor X ID is good for two reasons. One, another thing worth mentioning. The Wolverine wanted poster, though it doesn't give the healing effect. I want to point out, part of this is ownership. The Wolverine Headmaster ID gives the heal one click. So good, but unfortunately, it's not available to me. The other cool thing about the wanted one is it does give blades. And if I need to get Blade's Claws somehow, imagine the look on your opponent's face when you take Overdrive stats, but use Blade's Claws. People next door just cheered when I said that. I'm sure the two things are different. But anyway, so Overdrive, 9 attack Blades could happen. Who knows? Or, maybe you're just so hard up for getting some extra damage out of Michelangelo. You end up just going the route of here's some Blade's Claws. Let's see if I can get through some kind of power that's giving me a hard time. So then the Professor X has a twofold job. He's either the Professor X Prime gets a bunch of Colossals lined up and just eats them and then turns them into birds. I'm okay with this. I'm okay with this. The other possible effect is in a team like mine that has Overdrive as a requirement, as it were, Gesundheit, they'll need to be next to that person carrying them. And the other Professor X will say, no, go somewhere else, please, Overdrive. This is not a theme team, so I do not count on winning map. But if I am against another team that doesn't have a theme and I could possibly win the map against them, I will happily send their Overdrive right off the Bifrost. Boom, charged up. Bye-bye, it's dead. Oh, it's dead. Now what happens? Oh, look, I don't know what happens actually at this point if Overdrive would die if charged up dies on the orange terrain, because I don't know. I think it ends up dying, but anyway, could be a lot of fun if I have that option. Now, of course, that also counters my own team. So if I see my own team, I know how to deal with my own team. It also adds shape change, which is the ID card itself gives shape change. Not a bad functionality. The possible pogs, not a bad functionality. Generally, just a really good choice. It's just overall good. It's just good. And that's where I come up with. So this 200 points is actually 300 points. 60 suited henchmen. You know, you'd get called for stalling just setting up. And then watch an energy explosion just murder your team. Anyway, so this is the nonsense that I'm actually bringing to ROC Canada Cup. There's more in-depth information that will probably come from the Majestics article that I wrote. This is just this is the nonsense I'm pulling. Today I'm probably not going to build a popper team, just a heads up, because my brain's just not functioning that way right now. And I'm slouching, which generally means I'm tired. Also, happy little Heroclix. 60 suited henchmen. I want to tell you, those things cost $5 American each. $4 American each. So that's like $800 Canadian. So if I was to actually do the math on that, and let's just go with the $4 I've seen them at, times 60, that's $240. I have 6 of those. So this team is actually probably more expensive than the team I'm planning on playing. How's that for pay to win? I mean, it's one of those things. I think a Heroclix map is 18 by 24 squares. So 18 times 24. It's 432 squares. You pick up more than a sixth of the board. That's or more than a fifth of the board. Sixth of the board. Sixth of the board. I don't know. Math is failing me right now. Eighth of the board. Fifth of the board. 10th of the board. Bingo. It's not a 10th. It's not a 10th. A 10th of 432 would be 4.32. No, it would be 43.2. This is actually pretty close to a 10th. I think I'm too exhausted to do this episode today. Now, there's something I have to go back and deal with. This is a little bit of oopsie doodles from our patron Discord. The patron Discord, we had a question that I somehow missed during the Meta Lab, and I want to kind of address it now. So the player goes by Young Man Logan. I do believe I know who this is. You're so cool. Get your own answer. I don't know for sure, though. So we're just going to go by Young Man Logan, which is what he's referred to on the Discord. Now, his question was, what favorable concepts do you think you'll see this weekend? And what do you think the end result might fall Canadian or American? All right. I don't know about the Canadian-American thing. The ROC Canada Cup has always been that isolated thing where a few players from the U.S. have made it to previous ROC Canada Cups, but Canadian has managed to win it the 2 years we have run it. Year one was won by Tom Kerr. I got second that year. Woo! And year two was won by Jason Osorio, who knocked me out in the top 8. So ROC Canada Cup is that thing where the Canadians win, but at the same time, one American player has shown up both times, I believe. I think both times were Adam Cole. Yeah, so that's there's a lot more coming this time around. So, but I never want to say Canadian American. Anything like that. There are some really good players coming down up from the States. Chris Stockhouse is a really good player. PJ Boland's a really good player. Patricia Lamb, Nick Peterson are coming up. They're both really good players. I don't know what other Americans are coming up, but a lot of good players. A lot of players with wins behind their names. So we are hard-pressed to stay on top of this and win it. And I made the mistake of making a last-second change, informed and worked with by one of those guys who's coming up. So now he knows my team in full, but so does everybody because this is what I do. I roll with the punches. But as far as concepts, I mean, I think, yeah, Jared, one of our local players, is afraid of all the Americans coming. I don't blame you, Jared. I don't blame you at all, sir. As far as concepts, you know what? I'm going to kind of go through. PJ wrote an article for Majestics, and a couple things have stood out as far as the grander metagame is concerned. The full point Goblin King is a threat. He's a problem for a lot of teams, to say the least, and not a lot of teams can just flat out take him out. Heck, I mean, I know my team just can't do that. The Gotham City Underworld using that penguin bomb. I've seen it in the past. It is not new. It is most certainly scary. So be aware of that. Wolverine Swarms. Lila Cheney carrying Wolverines. If that doesn't scare you, you are unscarable. There's the Deadpool X-Men variant. I know a couple players who do play that are going, so be aware of that. And the Deadpool variant does have a Cyclops, it does have a Deadpool, and it does have 2 Wolverines on there, along with a Moira McTaggart and ID cards too, and the boxing ring to generally fill things out. There's the Blackbird. Will come, may or may not arrive in certain costumes, as it were. There's the fill your starting area with giant girls Hawkeye. I'm not sure we'll see that, though. Who knows, right? There's the some players might try that multiple Avengers chases. Just full-blown teams of giant girls are a possibility. The Star Fox is definitely a contender. Star Fox with Mjolnir cosmic theme teams. Starro is not to be overlooked. Starro is a threat. Unimind still a threat. If you have resigned yourself to go, I don't think Unimind's really a problem. You're drinking, share. Unimind is still a threat in this metagame. He's basically the can I beat Unimind? If not, maybe I should play a different team kind of standard. We have the Star Fox and Infinity. There's just a lot of Star Fox variation. There's multiple monster variants. There's my own monster variant that had Carnage, Goblin King, Dr. Frankenstein's, Groots, and Surtur. There's the Whale variant. There's the Peace Machine Shredder variants. And there's the Shredder variants that won't have Peace Machine. Be aware. There's the Sam Cap and Vehicle. There's the Doc Ock and Star Trek Chase team. Be aware of that one. Fast Force Hulk teams are there. And there's the modern Don't Die tech of using Deadpools, Mini Shredders, Lockjaws, and Ironhearts to just grind your opponent into dust, or at least grind their soul into dust. Yeah, so these are the kinds of concepts you can expect. Outside of that, there's still some room to build and to idealize. I'm sure we'll see some kind of King Shark variant. I've seen it in the past, and I wouldn't put it past any player. You know who you are, Jared, to use the King Shark, or various versions. Like, I know locally the X-Men Swarm has been kind of meddled with in different ways. I've seen variants that use the Shadow Cat con exclusive to increase stats to make it a huge, as if it wasn't enough of a threat, make it more of a threat, as it were. So be aware of that. Alpha strikes are a thing. Somebody might be brave enough to bring a Title Thor rush, which involves hypersonicking with a Title Thor, calling a flurry, the common Asgardian Captain America, over to him to flurry charge with blades in your face. I've seen that variant run. I've seen teams that use Jane Foster and Eric Masterson to try to bring their other versions out in a hurry. I have seen locally, what's it called? Skeets using the big dial that calls in the Mr. Mind version, the monster version, as it were. So we are in a world where alternatives do exist and ideas are not to be okay. This is one of those things I want to touch on, and it's really hard to just say this without extending to a different story. But there are good parts and bad parts to a wide open meta. And I may have discussed this in the past, but it's worth discussing again. So what is the good part of a wide meta? You can play a lot of different teams and feel comfortable with them. You know, the more wide open a meta game is, or a competitive meta scene, or meta collection, or the competitive environment itself, as far as that's concerned, the wider the range of teams that you're able to build, the more you can kind of idealize. You know what I mean? You're not hamstrung to, if it doesn't beat this, I don't play it. I mean, granted, we say that about Unimind, but Unimind is just one team. And when there's a high variance, we get to the first negative. A high variance means bad planning in almost all cases. The amount of practice that is required to make your way through a larger meta is a not zero number. It is quite the opposite of zero. It's pretty close to infinity. You need infinity practice to be able to just struggle your way through this kind of meta. It's not easy. And that is kind of it's a slight, it's not a big, like, I'm not saying, oh my God, it's bad, but it is one of the downsides to a wide open meta is the amount of planning you require becomes exponentially more intense. Now, granted, that means that you're probably better off just saying, I have this team and it loses to these teams, but if I don't run into these teams with X number of players, or if X number of players aren't playing these teams over here, then I have nothing to worry about. Now, do I? Know what I mean? But then, you know, the other downside is like bringing one answer means you deal with one problem and you have 100 problems, right? So single answers are more frequently wasted. Now, this is why I also say do not plan on having a silver bullet for everything. A lot of people play Unseen, and the Unseen does really well against, something really neat against Colossal Retaliators. But he's not the true answer to a Colossal Retaliator, and he does not completely stuff them. He doesn't stop them completely. He makes them harder to use, but he also does 1,000 other things. So you got to make sure you're not bringing single-minded characters like that. So one example is the Spiderling, which had recently come out. And it's like, yeah, I'm going to play Spiderling, and I'm going to make sure that Colossal Retaliation doesn't win against me. And I kind of look at that and say, well, okay, but what else does Spiderling do if I don't have Colossal Retaliators to deal with? So for as an example, the team that I built today, or I showed you guys today, does not have any Colossal Retaliators. How much of a threat is Spiderling to me? She's a 3-click, 30-point character. Almost all of my team does 3 damage, so just got to get a hit off, and she did. I mean, even my own Peace Machine doesn't protect her. So she's a glass answer to a problem that is, it comes on teams. It's very prominent, but it's also not a requirement, right? Anyway, I'm getting off track. Sometimes, too, the downside to a metagame that is very wide open is sometimes there are very one-sided matchups. I off the top of my head, considering the current environment right now, if I was to go look back and look at that list of teams, there are some teams that will just go, oh, well, this is going to be an uphill battle from the get-go. The Goblin King variations are just going to just be a problem for certain versions of certain teams. And they just don't care, right? But at the same time, Wolverine Swarms, if they're not playing with a full complement, like the Wolverine Swarm has a problem with Mangog. Like, we all know that this problem exists. And you throw something up, Wolverine kills it, and you're like, well, here go they all. You can work around that, but, I mean, good luck. The Hard X-Men team in the right map just stuff the monster variants. I've seen it happen to me. The Cosmic teams, they kind of sit there and generally don't die. You know what I mean? Like, they don't give it up too much. And they mostly give up their Walking Woods. Oh well, not a big deal. What else? Yeah, so what ends up happening when it's a wide open meta is there are more one-sided matchups. I can't just outright say some of these outright lose to, a certain number of things. But some of them will just not be fun matchups for one player. And that it's worse. In that case, it is to say it is worse when it is a more closed in. Like, if let's say there's a 14 meta. If you play anything outside of that 14 meta, you lose to those 4 teams. That's generally the case. Or you beat one of those teams and lose to the other 3. What ends up happening is there's very rarely a 1-team meta. There's often a 4-team, like a minimum 4-team meta. But the problem is that the 4 teams don't run into each other in certain matchups or anything like that, and then the ones that win just kind of excel and people get their eyes on them, right? So I'm not going to say one or the other is, the definite thing, but a wide open meta is not a perfect meta in a lot of cases. If that kind of helps anybody. If anybody has any questions during the chat, too, feel free to pop them in. Usually, I know I said at the beginning of the show, don't ask me questions. They kind of derail me, but I kind of derailed myself, and I don't know how I'm going to get back on the tracks here. So I'm going to open up the questions for a couple minutes. If I can't get a good flow on, I think we'll call it early for today and get a fresh start tomorrow with possibly a little bit more direction on my own. I am, in the meantime, still really hyped for the WWE clicks. And that's, dude, it's such that I've come up with so many cool ideas. It's one of those. This is a set that I wish I was either a fly on the wall of design with a megaphone, or I was on the design team. But nature of my job, nature of the time I need, and where WizKids is, that's just not an ideal situation, right? And I just can't devote enough time into game designing for something that's not my direct paying job, as it were. So we'll play that by ear. Maybe the guys in New Jersey will get a call from me if something terrible happens to me where I am right now. But yeah, it's one of those interesting things. You look at the long storied history of the WWE on its own and what they own. There's so many possibilities for what can be done with this game. The inclusion of certain they could do some sets, like the Heroclix itself, they could be safe. They could be safe with some really weird offshoot stuff and still be able to sell. And they could stay out of their modern era of wrestling for a good solid year and a half before making anything modern, like wrestling modern, that is. Of course, the figures have to be modern playable, otherwise they will not sell. That's kind of a thing that has to happen. So Vince McMahon does have to accept the fact that Superman might be able to beat up Steve Austin or Vince McMahon himself or Shane McMahon. Shane McMahon is obviously the best wrestler in the world, right, guys? For my fellow wrestling fans. Jared Duffy once asks, do you think the teams and factions will be keywords? Some of them will. Not all of them, but some of them. I think we'll see things like the Nation of Domination, Evolution, Corporation, the Ministry of Darkness, the Brood. Ooh, you got to be careful with that naming because, oh no, wait, Brood characters in Heroclix. Let's take a look at that. Generally don't have, oh no, there's a Brood keyword. So I'd have to very specifically say the Brood. Oh no, but the gets around. Oh man. Brood Professor X is going to lead Gangrel, Edge, and Christian. That's going to happen, guys. I said it here first. Maybe they won't be made though, because I also remember back in the day. Here's a funny fact that a lot of people miss. The character Gangrel in pro wrestling. This is a little bit of gamer nerd trivia for those of you who are who might be interested. The wrestler Gangrel, his name. Gangrel is actually the name of a tribe of vampires in the role-playing universe World of Darkness, Vampire the Masquerade. And as a result, in lieu of saying, White Wolf had their own trademarks and everything on all the product, and were probably able to, send a cease and desist to WWE, but instead said, you know what? Can we sponsor this guy? Fund him just to make sure his name is out there. And it was so funny because Gangrel as a character was a vampire pro wrestler. Okay, we're already off the deep end here, but then he's like Gangrel, the name of the Gangrel tribe and the vampire. What? So a little bit of wrestling trivia for you. That is a thing that that did happen. Oh, I forgot that this Professor X has Empower too. So yeah. I can do extra damage courtesy of this Professor X. Oh, man. This Professor X is so good. I'm looking at the Prime Brood Professor X, by the way. Excuse me. Oh, man. Pork souvlaki burps are the best. Because pork souvlaki is tasty the first time, and it is tasty the second time, too. I'm just kind of going around the world of Heroclix, clicking on my mouse, wondering what I'm going to do with myself. Yeah. Okay. I can't seem to get on track today. I'm completely off the rails, and I'm not doing anybody any favors. So we're going to sign off for today. Shorter episode today. We'll be back on track tomorrow. I'll do a popper build for next week, and this is an update I do want to cover now. This week, the second episode of Into the Mind of Madness, Heroclix Madness, is going to be the second episode of the week of the show. And what I'm going to do is I'm still going to do two extra live shows on top of the Metal Lab with just my talking head at you. But one of them is going to be Into the Mind of Heroclix Madness, where I talk about my competitive adventure. And the other one, I have to double check to make sure nobody's doing this, but I think I'm going to either call it the Popper's Pit or Everyman's Corner, just to get that. I'm probably leaning on the Everyman's Corner because Everyman makes more sense as the comic version. Anyway, we'll do an actual show where we just devote ourselves to building with nothing but commons. And you know what? Maybe we'll come across a team that might actually be competitive. Who knows? I'm probably fooling myself, to say the least, but I think that could be a fun adventure. Anyway, so this week, today's episode and tomorrow's episode is still going to be called Into the Mind of Madness. And the next week is going to be Into the Mind of Madness and whatever we end up actually calling the Popper's Pit, as we slowly take our time to develop this show into the channel into a daily show sort of thing. Like, we're going to have one show per day, some of it recorded content, some of it live content, 3 live shows a day, 4 shows a week. Sorry. Not 3 live shows a day. I have a job. But yeah, that's kind of the direction we're going right now. If you want to help us on that direction, check us out at patreon.com/marriedwithclicks. Any support kind of helps us out. Any dollar valuation gets you access to Discord, where I will see your questions when I actually bother myself to pay attention or don't turn on streamer mode during the day before my show starts and catch these questions on there. Excuse me. Also, we have our friends over at majesticccg.com/APEX-Insiders. And yeah, so we're looking forward to hopefully next week getting started on the seven episodes per week content, or 7 shows per week. Or we'll slowly roll into introducing the new shows as we go or whatever. It's still a work in progress. We're hoping to get it done starting next week at the minimum, or at least get at least 5 days next week. Keep everybody happy. All right. On that note, thank you for helping me dive into my mind of madness. And I look forward to seeing all you guys tomorrow as I continue my brain farts with the last episode of Into the Madness before the ROC Canada Cup, where we kind of just... I think tomorrow we'll do our popper build first, and we'll spend a lot of time just dissecting where we've come before the tournament, and just kind of where our thought process went up and down, and then when I decided to jump off the bridge. And so I look forward to that. I look forward to seeing you guys next week or tomorrow. And tomorrow in the chat, feel free to bring questions, because I feel like if I'm like this today, I'm going to be like this tomorrow. So I might need a little bit of guidance to keep the show on track. I like to improv a little too much sometimes, guys, and today it was to my detriment. Have a good night.